G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle. What a provocative title on the video right there. You know, I tossed up whether or not it was a bit harsh, but I think it's actually a pretty accurate title, at least accurate enough to work with, so it's what I've gone for. So out of all the books to compare, why two books that came out 5 years apart? Why not just compare book 8 and book 9? They're closer in time to one another, same writing team. Well, the reason why is because the books are actually very similar. One being highly popular, the other less so. And I feel that it's the differences between them which explain the colder reception of book 9. The intent today is not to pick on the company or any such thing, but rather to demonstrate the changing circumstances in the relationship triangle of customer, product, and company. So what do they have in common? Well, both books represent a single narrative, a single chain of events. And this is done by two principal Astartes faction without any real outside help. The Betrayal at Kelth, with the Wordbearers versus the Ultramarines, and the Thrummers Crusade, with the Night Lords versus the Dark Angels. Both books feature a previously visited traitor faction, Wordbearers and Night Lords respectively, revisiting them and expanding upon their core elements with new units and miniatures. Both books also feature a new Astartes faction, Ultramarines in one, Dark Angels in the other, along with Legion rules, war gear, rights of war characters and their respective Primarchs. So, how can it be that the two have been so differently received? Well, let's take a bit of a deep dive on the subject and compare the older Tempest with 272 pages versus the new Crusade with a mere 208 pages. The page count, of course, is the first indicator, with the amount of content you got for your investment in 2015 being about 30% more than the 2020 book, let alone the financial divide. Next, let's compare the new legions. You see, the Ultramarines were, forgive the pun, a bolt from the blue. You had nothing to go by prior to release, so the reveal was total. The Dark Angels, on the other hand, represent the polar opposite. They existed in Book 6, with functioning Legion rules, war gear, and even 2 rights of war. That meant that in the 4 years since the release of Book 6, the writers at Forge World have had to only tidy up said existing rules, add the unique units, characters, and Primarch. And optionally, they added additional rights of war. That's thus a fair bit less comprehensive as far as a release goes. It was basically half out already as far as many people are concerned. Next, Book 5 had a list full for Imperial Army, with cults and militia, and this filled a niche in the lineup. Prior to Book 4, the game had consisted of Marines and Mechanicum. Book 4 itself gave us the Elite Solar Auxilia and Night Houses. And so Book 5 added a new Legion, an incredibly versatile militia force. Book 9 though, Book 9 has replaced this with nothing, not even artwork. The only new entry in the entire book is basically the Dark Angels. Next, you have the release schedule. Books 2, 3, 4, and 5 all appeared within roughly 6 months of one another. This meant that the community was not only hyped up, but consistently getting content. It's not a worry if someone is missing something from their book, because, well, the next book will be out soon is the rationale in your head. From September 2013 to March of 2015, comprehensive rules were released for 9 legions, additional rights of war and units for all 4 Book 1 legions, 3 Mechanicum factions, a Knight faction, Solar Auxilia and Militia were also released. Conversely, since Book 7 in February of 2017 up until September of 2020 with the release of Crusade, you've only got 2 full legions, the fleshing out of 3 legions, a demon list, a Custodes list, a revised version of the Custodes list, and actually, that's all. It's been a much longer span of time, but there's been less books and less than half the content. Lastly, an intangible factor, the display board. Each Forge World book release has had an incredible display board released alongside it, with a diorama of the models from said book. This diorama exists not just for the cool factor, but as a genuine marketing strategy, because the diorama displays the content within the book, which sells the narrative. It inspires the hobbyist, it makes you want to buy more. Book 9 should have been ready to go in February, prior to the virus hitting Europe, so that's no excuse. There shouldn't therefore have been a delay to the display table, which means, based on what I've seen, there is no tie-in scenic board this time out. Time may tell on this one, but I can only say I'm disappointed not to see one so far. So, what conclusions can we actually draw from this? Well, if the book was short, nobody would complain. Being shorter and not cheaper, immediately people get their nose out of joint. That's problem one. Having only one new Legion and a revisit, that was fine, but failing to supplement this reduced content with another faction, such as the Dark Mechanicum, was a huge letdown. That's problem two. The 18-month-long delay in production and delivery, in spite of it being such a reduced product in comparison to previous entries, further frustrates. That's problem 3. Lastly, a selection of rules which do require some tweaking to work correctly, whilst not a problem in a content-saturated book, becomes a problem when new material is so scant. That's problem 4. Lastly, the scope of additional units is much reduced on previous entries. A reworked Deredeo, 3 Arquator variants for Solar and Militia. We also get the Aurochs and the Carnodon. That's it, that's all the additional entries, which is very scant on the ground compared to previous books. It's not a major problem, but it's an issue. So what you have here is this conclusion. It's not any one failing on behalf of the book. The fluff is great, the legions are acceptable, even with typos and strange rules. But the combination of factors combined equal a subpar product in comparison to what has come before. Player expectations were possibly too high, but in light of the development time, it's understandable. My strong advice to Forger in the future would be to use the space available to avoid a repeat of this disappointing performance. A good next book would be The Martian Civil War, a book which doesn't focus on Marines but on Mechanicum and Dark Mechanicum. I'd supplement this with additional Knight households and perhaps even finally add a proper Imperial Army list. As in the regular humans, not the conscripted masses of the militia. This will finally bring all of the major factions into being that are required for the Horus Heresy game, and it will leave the way open from here on out to rejig existing factions and flesh out the background of the conflict more. Shorter books will be okay, but here and now in Book 9, this wasn't the time. And on top of this, I think it's really important to add the price point. You need to price the content around what is actually making up the meat of it, the substance of the product. And right now, the product is a bit undercooked. You can't charge more than you have for any other book and yet provide a third less of the content, or even less than that. It's just not good enough. So that's my thoughts on why the book has received such a lackluster reception from the community. I'm not trying to say whether people are right or wrong to feel this way, only to simply point out why they feel that way. I'm Mac with the Outer Circle. Thank you all for watching the episode, and I'll see you all next time.